everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Sean's Movie Crusades. My name is Sean Wassenkrug, and I'm here to review all the latest films in theaters and streaming, as well as anything that you guys recommend, whether it be recent films or old school movies. Before we get into today's episode, don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel, so that way you guys stay up to date with all the latest films that pop up on the page. Also, don't forget to follow us at all the social media outlets you see below. Now, today's review is the latest in the Disney live-action remakes of their animations, and that is Disney's Dumbo. Now, for most people, this is kind of a give or take on whether they like or dislike these live-action remakes. I personally never saw the Cinderella one. Honestly, when it came out, I didn't realize that that's what they were actually doing. I just thought it was someone else doing their personal take of Cinderella, so I didn't know it was a live-action remake, so at some point, I'll have to go back and watch that. But I really liked Jungle Book. I thought Jungle Book did a really good job. Loved the voice work. Loved how amazing the animals looked in the film overall. And I will die on this hill forever. But I loved Beauty and the Beast. I know a lot of people are arguing that it's the exact same film and blah, blah. No, it's not. There are elements in the movie that were never in the cartoon. There's a song number that was not in the cartoon. The backstory of Belle's mother was not in the cartoon. Actually, there was another song in the movie that was not in the cartoon. So I can't stand people who say that it was a shot-for-shot remake when there was literally things in the film that were not in the original. And I personally loved Beauty and the Beast. It was one of my favorite movies of the year when it came out, and I will fight you on it. But yeah, so basically the next one up was Dumbo. And then we also have Aladdin, which I've pretty much have voiced my opinions on Aladdin on this channel quite a bit. So if you guys go back, you guys can find that. And of course, we got Lion King coming out later this year. So Dumbo, to be honest, I can barely remember the original Dumbo. I mean, I went back and I read about it, mainly because I just didn't have it to watch. So I went back and I read the plot summary and points. That way I kind of had a general idea of what Dumbo was, because I vividly remember parts of it, but I don't remember a good chunk of it. But the main thing I remember is that the movie itself is only about 50 minutes long, and this live adaptation is right around the 2-hour mark. So the main question was, how are they going to fill a whole hour's worth of new story into this movie overall? The other big thing is that Tim Burton is taking the directing chair in this one. And with Tim Burton, he's been kind of touch and go. I mean, he's got fantastic films. You know, I mean, you got Beetlejuice, you've got Edward Scissorhands. I personally love the hell out of Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. And, you know, you got more as well. I'm just they're escaping me right now. But recently, he's kind of been doing some stinkers. Oh, Big Fish. That's a huge, criminally underrated. Big Fish is a phenomenal film, and anyone who hasn't seen it needs to go out of their way to see that film. It is a phenomenal film, and it's one of my favorites of Tim Burton. But yeah, recently, Tim Burton hasn't been doing real good lately. I mean, you had the Alice in Wonderland films. I personally could not stand either one of those. I never did see, I can't remember the entire name. It's like Miss Peregrine, and yeah, I can't remember the whole, I'm not even going to try to butcher it here, but I never got to see that one. I heard kind of mixed things about it. But yeah, Tim Burton's just kind of been off and on lately. But I felt that with Dumbo, that he was going to finally get his swing into things. I saw the first trailer. While it didn't necessarily excite me to see the film or wow me by any chance, I still felt that Tim Burton, with the cast that he had, because it does have a stellar cast with Colin Farrell, Michael Keaton, Danny DeVito, Ava Green, and of course how Dumbo looks in the trailers, that I felt like Tim Burton would do a very good job of this overall, and to keep Disney on the path of making really solid live-action remakes of their classic cartoons. But yeah, so let's dive into the review and let's see what I thought. First off, I would like to apologize firsthand for the camera. I am having to use a different camera than I normally do. So yes, I do see this shutter thing that is happening. I do not know how to fix it, so I apologize. Next review or next video I post will be back to the old camera. So I do apologize for the zoom out zoom in zoom thing that this camera is doing. But yeah, so anyway, for many people who don't know the plot of Dumbo, the general plot basically revolves around a circus, and there's a family, which this is actually different from the original Dumbo, so maybe people don't know the plot. This takes place in 1919, which is a little bit different because the original Dumbo came out in the 1940s, but this takes place in 1919, and you've got Colin Farrell's character, who goes by the name of Holt Ferrier, and he's coming home after World War I with a injury. He lost his left arm. But he's also coming back to a home where his wife has passed away. So their two children are kind of just been coping with that, with their father being away at war, also not knowing about his lost arm, and basically, you know, having to kind of deal with the loss and being alone and not being with their mother. What helps them is that they are a part of a circus, so they kind of have this entire circus family around them. The circus is run by Danny DeVito's character, Max Medici, and so it's a giant family of people, and so they've been taken care of. It's not like they've just been on their own. But yeah, so basically it's Colin Farrell kind of adapting to his new life without his wife, and trying to take more fatherly duties, and try to adapt to his new life with, you know, one less arm. The obviously main story, though, is that he used to be a horse rider with his wife, but because he's been gone for so long and the wife passing away, Danny DeVito's character sold the horses, so now he's in charge of the elephants. And one of the elephants is, Medici gets a brand new elephant, and that elephant is pregnant. And Medici, thinking that this is a cash prize because the circus business is floundering for him and his particular circus, that he feels that a baby elephant will do wonders for the circus and bring in a lot more revenue. Thus, Dumbo is born, and of course he looks off because he has wildly, weirdly big ears, to the point where Danny DeVito thinks of it as more of a travesty, and that he was basically taken advantage of for his money. They basically try to find ways to make a business out of Dumbo, but one amazing thing is that Dumbo can fly. And for that, where we kind of go into the original story of Dumbo, Dumbo gets separated from his mother because of certain events that happen in the film, and Dumbo flies, becoming widely popular, and then a big circus businessman known by V.A. Vanderveer, played by Michael Keaton, takes the circus under his wing so he can delve into the plot, or into the money and of Dumbo, and basically use Dumbo to make himself richer. And then other stuff happens, which I can't go into without it being spoilers, but that is basically the general plot of Dumbo. It is a lot different than the original Dumbo. I'm going to come out and say that right now. For people who were upset for claiming that Jungle Book and Beauty and the Beast were shot-for-shot remakes, Dumbo is 100% nothing like the original film. There are beats that Dumbo follows that is similar to the original, but a lot of that is in the first half hour, and then after that, it is an entirely different film. If not for how Dumbo ends, I would say that this is basically a sequel to the original Dumbo because of how far off they go with their own story. But yeah, for people who did not want a shot-for-shot remake, you will be pleasantly surprised that Dumbo is very, very little like its predecessor. Now, what works in Dumbo? First things first, Dumbo is easily the most adorable looking baby elephant. You can't help but just melt whenever Dumbo's on screen. And Tim Burton does a phenomenal job with the CGI of making Dumbo as lovable and as adorable as he could be. I mean, his eyes will melt your heart. His goofy ears, everything about Dumbo is fantastic. And when he takes flight for the first time in the actual circus, I don't know what was going on, but for some reason, every time he takes flight in the circus, I actually got kind of a little emotional. I'm not saying that I cried or anything about that, but there is some very emotional beats in the film. But for some reason, whenever Dumbo flew, I don't know, for some reason I got emotional. Could not tell you why, because it wasn't like it was a sad moment or anything like that, but for some reason my eyes got a little misty every time he flew. Could not really answer why. But anyway, but yeah, Dumbo is fantastic. Obviously, he's the main reason you want to go to see this film, and he is absolutely a highlight of the film, as he should be. So definitely, if you guys are worried about how Dumbo is portrayed or how he looks, you have no need to worry. Dumbo looks fantastic in the film overall. One other thing I liked is of the human actors in the film, Danny DeVito is easily the highlight of the film. Danny DeVito does what Danny DeVito does best. He has a way of acting sleazy and kind of a money grubber, but he does it in a way that still shows a lot of heart and humor, to the point where you love his Max Medici's character throughout the film. My only problem is that his character does tend to take kind of a back seat near the end of the film, to the point where he's almost forgotten in certain aspects. There were certain points where I was like, why isn't Max Medici at this point? I know where he was in the film, but it just felt off that he was not a part of it in certain points. But he is a highlight of the film overall. Michael Keaton really cheeses it up in this film as V.A. Vanderveer, and he's definitely having a fun time playing this character. It's definitely something that Michael Keaton hasn't played in quite a while. So you can tell he's having a whole lot of fun. Plus, it's the first time that we've had him and Danny DeVito on screen since Batman Returns, when they played Batman and Penguin. Are there times where Keaton overdoes it? Yes, there's one scene in particular where he's talking to Danny DeVito, and he just does this weird motion towards nothing, and he looks off into the sunset, and then he freezes in that motion. And it's just a really weird director choice to make him do that. But yeah, the only problem with Michael Keaton's character is we don't have enough time with him. And what I mean by that is, yes, he is in half of the film. Like, the story arc of him is half in the film. But there's just not a whole lot of character to him based off of the basic facts that we know about him. And I felt like that they could have delved a little bit more into Keaton's character and his actions for why he does things, and the reasons for why he does certain things over other things. I know that sounds very vague, but I'm trying to stay spoiler-free as I can. But I felt like they could have done a little bit more with Michael Keaton's character overall to basically expand his character to have it a little bit more of an understanding. The rest of the circus cast, like the strongmen, those kind of characters, they're all pretty suitable. They all have their little moments here and there. I mean, they're not going to hit the ranks of, like, Greatest Showman freak shows or freaks or anything like that. But they were fine all the way through. Some have a little bit bigger parts than others. But they're pretty solid the whole way through. I mean, none of them are putting on phenomenal performances, mind you. But none of them are putting on bad performances either. So the circus employees do a pretty good job throughout the whole film overall. But yeah, that is basically it for me on what works. What doesn't work is a lot of other things. First things first, Colin Farrell and Ava Green, I think, were not underutilized per se, but were just not given much to go on in terms of a performance. Colin Green, Jesus, my apologies, it's late. I'm trying to get this out for you guys. Colin Farrell, his character is given a lot to work with, but he's not given any time really to act on the things that he has to work with, because obviously the story is Dumbo. And that's the main problem with this film overall. It's not that it's Dumbo, it's that the human characters don't really have a whole lot to do except for move the plot of Dumbo. There is a lot of stuff that they could have done to give these characters more meat on their bones, especially Colin Farrell, because, I mean, he has to deal with losing an arm. He's got to deal with being a father again to his two children. He has to deal with the loss of his wife. There's so much that they could have worked on with Colin Farrell, but because the movie isn't necessarily about Colin Farrell's character, we're just not given enough time to let Colin Farrell really sink his teeth into the role, to the point where he kind of has to take a backseat just to be the pseudo dad / potential hero of the third act with Dumbo, to the point where he really isn't given much to go on. Same thing goes with Eva Green. Eva Green is a phenomenal actress. She's one of my favorite actresses out there ever since Casino Royale. And for anyone who has not seen Penny Dreadful, go out of your way to see Penny Dreadful. It is one of the best performances on TV, done by Eva Green. And if you guys aren't a fan of her, go see that. And if you're not a fan of her after that, I really don't know what to tell you. But she's ultimately wasted too. I mean, she basically plays the Colette Merchant. She's French, but she's kind of like the trapeze artist character, but she's kind of like the highlight of Vanderveer's show until Dumbo shows up. So he decides to put her and Dumbo together, which her communication and her scenes with Dumbo actually work really well, and she does a great job of developing that relationship with Dumbo in the film. Everyone, I guess that's technically a good part, everyone does a great job of interacting with Dumbo. 100%. There's no one in the movie that just doesn't do a good job working with Dumbo overall. But it's just, once again, it's like, she's just a very generic character overall. They do kind of slightly tell her some of her story, of her past, but they don't ever delve into it. Why? Because she's not the focal point of the movie. It's all about Dumbo. So once again, you have two characters in terms of Eva Green and Colin Farrell, where you could have delved into their characters more, so even Michael Keaton's character, where you could have delved more into their characters to give us more just kind of fleshed out, but they're not, because the movie needs to be focused on the elephant. And that's a lot of the problem with the human cast. The two children, the boy who plays Joe Ferrier, he's Finley Hobbins. He's fine. He just doesn't really get a whole lot to do. He just is kind of more of a reaction kind of actor in the film. The main one that people are talking about is Millie Ferrier, the daughter, who is played by Nico Parker. A lot of people that I've heard are saying she was fine or she did a great job. I personally don't agree. I think that she's really good at delivering the lines, but she has no ability to show facial expressions in the movie. The entire film, I almost wondered if she had Botox and that she was incapable of moving any kind of facial reactions in the film, because I think there's maybe only twice in the movie that she smiles, and then after that, she's basically has the same look on her face the entire time. And no matter how upset or happy or whatever she's discussing or talking about in the film, she maintains the same face throughout the entire film, outside of 2 moments where she actually cracks a smile. Which to me means that Tim Burton really just does not care enough about focusing on the actors in the film, because it's all even he knows that it's all about Dumbo. But yeah, that really bugged me, is that she really will not change her facial expressions at all in the film. There's also another character. I'm not seeing him right now pop up on my cast list, mainly because it's small writing. But the elephant wrangler in the film is, oh god, cringeworthy bad. That's the only bad performance in the film acting wise, outside of obviously Nico Parker not showing facial expression. When the entire circus people are all generally nice, fun-loving people for the most part, and then you have this one gigantic asshole, it really makes everything feel off, and very bad writing overall. If you're gonna have one overly eccentric jerk, then you need to have some other characters be that way too, because it gets to the point where it's like, why, if everyone in this circus are nice, fun-loving people, why would they keep this guy around? Because this guy is just downright horrible in the film. And I'm not talking about horrible acting. I'm talking about the actor is portraying such a horrible person and how he treats people that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense of why he would have been kept around when everyone else that works there is a nice person. And for the first 15-20 minutes, it's rough. because of this character. But then the character quickly gets dispatched after that, and then you can kind of relax and go. I mean, there's your sad moments still, but with that character out of the mix, it definitely does make the movie a whole lot better. If I could find the character real quick, I would tell you, but when you see the movie, you'll know who I'm talking about. Other problems with the film is, first off, the original Dumbo has talking animals. There are no talking animals in the film. One of the favorite characters of Dumbo is, I believe it's Timothy the Mouse. That is not a character in this film, so anyone who loves that character, you're not going to get that. Is there a mouse in the film? Yes, but it does not talk, nor is it a focal point in the movie at all. So for anyone who is looking for that relationship between the mouse and Dumbo, it's not there. So I apologize for that. Well, it's not my fault, but you know what I mean. But yeah, everything is focused around Dumbo, but the main problem that I have with the film overall is that there's just, first off, like I said, the film takes place in 1919, and there are a lot of things in this movie that should not be around in 1919, such as technology, for example. Without going into great detail, there are certain technological things in the film that happen that made me immediately stop and go, I don't think that would have been invented or have been around back then. And while I would normally say, well, it's a Tim Burton movie and Tim Burton's just going to do weird, crazy things, he tends to keep the movie, for the most part, in kind of a realism, outside of, obviously, a gigantic, or not gigantic, but a baby elephant with gigantic ears that can fly. But everything else is relatively, close to real as you can get. But then once we enter Vanderveer's world, for instance, it's called Dreamland, that's when it really starts to go over to the, none of this stuff should be here because it's 1919, and it makes none of this stuff would have been invented by then, and it really kind of, not necessarily takes you out of the movie, but it just keeps making you stop and go, that shouldn't be in this film. And there's a certain thing they do in the movie that is a callback to the original that even to this day they couldn't pull off in real life. Like I said, I don't want to say it in terms of spoilers, but I'm watching this, I'm like, that's cool looking, but there's no way that they would be able to pull that off even by today's standards, let alone in 1919. And they're doing it in an entirely different way than they had done in the original cartoon. The other big problem that kept bugging me, and this might come off as nitpicky to most people, but it really just drove me insane in the third act. Dumbo, generously, I would say Dumbo at most is maybe 6 months old by the end of the film. He's honestly probably 3 to 4 months old at most. He's still a baby, but they make Dumbo so clever and smart in this movie that the stuff he does in the third act is just ridiculous. There are certain things that he does where I'm like, there's no way in hell Dumbo would know how to do this, or that Dumbo would follow or know that he needs to do this. There's no way Dumbo could do this. There's no way Dumbo could find this. There's no way Dumbo would know where this is or where to go. Certain things like that it just kept taking me out of the film overall, because you gotta remember, Dumbo's a baby. Plus, it's like Dumbo already knows English, because no matter what they say to Dumbo, Dumbo understands. And if Dumbo was older, I could maybe go, okay, he's learned it. But it's just, he's too young of a character. And I get it. It's a Disney film. We're talking about a flying baby elephant. But come on. When the rest of the film is acting for the most part real, the actual, I know it sounds ridiculous and you guys are probably saying, Sean, get over yourself. But the actual not talking, sorry, he does not talk. But the baby flying elephant being able to understand human language and do certain things, you just gotta let that go. I just can't. I just can't. The stuff that he does, I'm just constantly going, how the hell does he know how to do this? And that really irked me all the way through. And because of that, Dumbo does feel very all over the place. Like I said, the human cast, like I said, acting-wise, they're solid outside of one particular character. But they're, like I said, they're bare-boned. They're not given much to work with. while there is story there to be had, none of them actually delve into it to the point because they are there to move the plot along for Dumbo. The only character that I think they got fully fledged for the most part, with no objections about, is Danny DeVito's Max Medici. I think he's the only character that actually, you know him pretty much through and through, and everything that you needed to know about him, you get. And you understand his character probably the easiest and the most out of the entire film, outside of the children. But all the rest of Colin Farrell, Michael Keaton, and Ava Green's character needed more time, needed more story to really develop into characters, but they're not. They're just plot devices to move Dumbo along through the film and to get to certain story arcs of the movie overall. So yeah, going into the overall thoughts. While it visually looks amazing, and Tim Burton should be proud of how the film looks, the story overall is a failure. Yes, it is a family film. Children will love the film. They will have a great time. But for adults, I mean, if you basically have to leave your brain and logic out by the door and just go in and just accept everything that happens, which I just couldn't do. So because of that, I don't necessarily recommend Dumbo. I think people who go to it will probably still enjoy it for the most part, because even with all my things that doesn't work, and while it irks me and bugs me while watching it, in the moment, for the most part, I still had a solid time watching it. I don't regret seeing Dumbo, but is it something that I would really ever go back and watch? Is it something like Jungle Book or Beauty and the Beast, where at any random moment, I would love to just put those in and watch those films? No, Dumbo's never going to be that film for me. So because of that, I would consider Dumbo probably, and like I said, I can't speak for Cinderella, but for me, Dumbo's the first actual live-action remake failure for Disney. So if you guys want to go see it, have fun with it. Don't take it too seriously, which I know, once again, I get that it is a baby flying elephant film, but still, it's just, it didn't work for me overall. I liked the way things looked. I love the emotional weight that it carried for me with Dumbo himself. But the human characters, I felt, were ultimately wasted. I also didn't buy the way the movie ends. That's another thing I didn't really buy into. Just by the way how everything happens, I'm like, that's not how it would happen. That's not how that works. But once again, you just gotta chalk it up to a Disney movie. And I would be more lenient over these things if this was a shot-for-shot remake of the cartoon, because you go, well, that's what happened in the cartoon, so they had to do it this way. But that's not how it happened. None of the stuff that I'm complaining about is in the original film. So I can't use that even as an excuse to be okay with it, because they're not following the same plot points and the story elements of the original film. It is literally them just going off and doing their own thing, and because of that, they fail miserably. So go see it if you got nothing else to see, or if you guys really, really are a huge Dumbo fan, or if you guys just really want to watch the live-action Disney films, then by all means go check it out. Just keep your expectations low. Maybe that'll make you guys like it even more. So because of that, Dumbo does crack into the top 10, but it is at the number 10 spot. So basically everything in front of that goes unchanged. You still have Us at number 1, Shazam at number 2, Fighting With My Family at number 3, with How to Train Your Dragon 3, The Hidden World at number 4, Lego Movie 2, the second part at number 5, with Happy Death Day to You going 6, Upside at number 7, Captain Marvel at number 8, Alita Battle Angel at number 9, with Dumbo just barely jumping Glass into the top 10. So Glass did drop out. And for anyone going, if you sound like you hate this movie, then why did you jump it over Glass? Because I'm still pissed at how Glass was. That's why. Could Glass still stay out of the top 10 by year's end? Well, by year's end, absolutely. But could next week I change Dumbo out of the top 10 and put Glass back in? That very well could happen, because it is very, very thin margin that I'm putting Dumbo over Glass. But yeah, that's how the top 10 rolls out, at least right now in my head. And as you will see, that the top 10 has changed compared to last week when I posted my Shazam review. Like I said, this top 10 can change literally at any moment. A lot of it just depends on how I am feeling from a week-to-week basis on the films. And as you can see, Captain Marvel did drop quite a bit from last week to this week. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. I know it was kind of a downer review for a movie that's supposed to be very happy for the most part. But if you guys like the review, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys feel like this review is worth sharing, go ahead and hit that share button. But most importantly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to the channel so that way you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos that pop up on YouTube. But most importantly, don't forget to follow us also on all the social media outlets you see below. And until next time, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.